What really is the rationale for this downgrade of Axis and ICICI Bank from the earlier triple B negative to now BB plus? Is it more to do with downgrade of India's operating environment to BB plus from the erstwhile triple B minus?
Hi, good morning. The operating environment is certainly one of the factors here. But I think it will be wrong to say that there were no pressures on the individual financial profiles. So their financial profiles, as we know, have been seeing pressure for quite some time. But I think the reason behind the downgrade, of course, is sort of also linked to the operating environment generally for banks. And it is really the downgrade from a triple minus to a double B plus for the operating environment. Was largely driven by the generally weak performance of the sector as a whole, the regulatory environment, but more so our expectation that it is unlikely to turn around anytime. Although there are arguably some green shoots, early signs of recovery that one is able to see in select banks, including ICICI and Axis. But by and large, when you review an operating environment and it's at a level lower than what it used to be, what it implies is that essentially institutions which are working or operating in a weaker operating environment must have significantly higher buffers. And given where the earnings, given where the NPLs, given where the core capitalization for both these banks is, clearly they don't meet the triple B minus cut.
Little surprising, Saswata, because both ICICI as well as Axis have largely cleaned up their books, and expectations are that the asset quality woes for them have bottomed out. We've seen just about any and every analyst on the street as well is pretty bullish about the prospects of both ICICI Bank and Axis, and they have been quite a fair bit of outperformers, if I can categorize them as that. Are you expecting any kind of big blow when it comes to the asset quality in the near term?
See, I think obviously from an asset quality perspective, there are certain near-term risks, and we certainly see that risk in the real estate, the housing finance space, especially the retail, arena, which has seen significant growth in recent years, but even more so if you generally take a look at retail. I think the sector as a whole has not seen a cycle for almost 10 years now. But notwithstanding that, I think it's important to understand that, ultimately when we are saying that an operating environment is a double B plus, what we're effectively saying is that, banks are underwriting double B range risks. And when banks are doing that, they need to effectively either one, price it in terms of their, so forth. Or if they're not able to do that, they need to sort of keep adequate capital buffers to be able to withstand potential stress. And I think on both these accounts, I think it would be fair to say that Indian banks as a whole have performed quite poorly in recent years. And I don't necessarily see that changing a lot, although, yes, you're right that there is some signs of recovery, and we have sort of factored that in. But the whole point is that one, of course, that recovery is not going to be strong enough to push at least ICICI and Axis back to a triple B kind of levels that we would like to see for banks rated triple B minus. That's one. And two is that clearly from a capital standpoint, we're just not comfortable with the current core capitalization because we think that the buffers are still quite moderate and exposes the balance sheet to stress.
Okay, fair enough. So, that's opening a Pandora's box, of course. The market's already a little nervous on any news of this kind. Do you see any material impact on earnings in the near term? I mean, I know you've said that as of now, you've factored in whatever we've seen in terms of numbers from the banks, but going forward?
Well, we expect from an earnings standpoint, I think that's probably the only variable which will likely see a faster recovery than the other aspects such as asset quality and capital. So I would use the word bullish, but we're a little more optimistic with respect to earnings as far as the private sector banks are concerned, and that's largely led by the fact that hopefully going forward, credit costs will likely see a significant reduction provided there are no new stresses on the books.
Sweta, on the point of your bigger concern, when is it that you see India's operating environment actually improve?
See, for all these years, you have to understand that we actually had the operating environment at Triple B, and that was under the expectation that some of these issues, the banking-related issues, resolution-related issues, would typically sort of work their way through in a manner that we would like to see in a Triple B kind of an environment. Unfortunately, the pain has taken far too long. Resolutions have not happened in the way we had envisaged them to. So, by and large, I think if you compare India to the other Triple B regions, and because as a global rating agency we do that quite often, it clearly does not stand out, amongst them, and that's one of the other reasons also which sort of led to a downward revision in terms of the operating environment. I think the other factor which also played a role in that was the governance aspect, and I think from that standpoint, I think Indian banks in general have disappointed, in recent years.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Shashwat, and running us through some of the rationale there behind